Okay, well, hello again, and today I'm going to be talking about one of the many things that we're trying to get accomplished this week, and that is reading this book, Dan Pink's A Whole New Mind. And so I guess the first question to ask is, well, why are we reading this book in this class? I mean, it's not exactly a book about technology, certainly it's not a book about technology in the way that Smart Mops was. And it's not really a book about writing either, which is, the other theme in this class. So why are we reading this book? And I guess that's a good question. And one of the answers is that even though it's not specifically a book about these things, writing and technology have a big role to play in what Pink does want to talk about, which is sort of the changing world of work and the new kinds of skills that he believes workers of the future will require. And as I'll talk about in a minute, we can see that in part technology plays a role in why work is changing. And at least I'm going to want to argue that writing, or at least how we might more broadly think about writing as all this kind of multimedia composition that we're working on in class, how those kinds of skills will be integral to the kinds of jobs that Pink is talking about. So what's at the center of Pink's book? Well, I know you're reading it, so you'll probably figure this out for yourself, but I'll talk a little bit about that. The title comes from Pink's use of this fairly common metaphor where people talk about being left-brained or right-brained and so on. And as Pink does point out in the book, this is a metaphor. I mean, we all need both sides of our brain to perform most mental activities. And that said, I mean, there's a certain amount of truth to the idea that certain activities are more left-brained or right-brained or whatever. But Pink is really more interested in thinking about this as a metaphor, and that's why he kind of goes to this idea of what he calls left-directed thinking and right-directed thinking. So left-directed thinking refers to these activities that we normally think of as associated with math or science, that is, rational thinking, logical thinking, being objective, things of that nature, while the things on the right side, as Pink talks about them, have more to do with creativity, expression, art, seeing the big picture, conceptualizing, things of that nature, what he talks about as emotional intelligence. And so what Pink argues is that if you go back, say, 30, 40, even 50 years, you could see the emergence of what gets called the knowledge economy or knowledge industry, which is includes a set of professions that are very reliant upon this kind of left-directed thinking that Pink describes. So whether it's engineers or lawyers or computer scientists, computer programmers, who else does Pink talk about? He talks about accountants, radiologists, people of this nature. In other words, all the professions that people my age were told that you should go to college and pursue. And I don't know, maybe you're told the same thing. But these jobs are all part of this knowledge industry. And so what happens is that, as Pink argues, there are three forces that come along that have begun to shift the kinds of careers that we might think about, or at least the types of activities that we'll be doing inside of those careers. And as you'll read, Pink talks about three forces. They are abundance, Asia, and automation. So there's three A's for you. I guess that's meant to help you remember them. So again, I know you're going to read this, but I'll give you just a little synopsis of what these three things are. Okay, well, I'm back from answering the phone. So yes, the questions of abundance, Asia, and automation. So abundance is Pink's way of talking about the kind of changing nature of our commercial marketplace. So for example, and this is one of the examples he gives, you go down to Target or Walmart and you're going to go buy a toilet brush because you need one. And you go into the aisle and there you're faced with a dozen or more choices for a toilet brush, and of course they all are going to do the job, right? They're all going to clean the toilet. And so how do you make your choice? I guess you could make your choice based on the amount of money you want to spend, but really there's not a whole lot of price difference between all of them. So you've got a dozen or more toilet brushes, all costing about the same amount of money, all of which will do the job of cleaning the toilet. So how do you make a choice? Well, I guess you have to make a choice, or you end up making a kind of emotional choice, right? You choose the one that you find most appealing on some level. Perhaps you can't even necessarily articulate why you like one over another. Maybe you can. Maybe you like its handle, maybe you like the color, who knows. But you make a choice that's based on style or design or some kind of emotional decision making. And so Pink's point here is that, in the knowledge economy, it's all about rational design, all about efficiency. Those kinds of values are the ones that are prized. And in a society where we have all of these things, all of them cheaply made, and we have to make choices, for you to be successful, for someone to be successful in business, you have to be able to make a product that appeals to people beyond the rational level, that's going to appeal to people in terms of style or design or emotion, something along those lines. So that's a shift that Pink points out. And then he moves on to Asia. And this one you've probably heard about because it comes up a lot in the election year and in political discussions. We talk about these things called offshoring, right, where jobs go to Asia, mostly to India and China and so on. And it's really probably more hyped than it actually has occurred, and yet it certainly does occur, and it's something that's in our mind, right? That all of these jobs that I've been listing before, the lawyer, the engineer, the radiologist, and so forth, the accountant, these are jobs that once were secure in America, that if you needed a lawyer, you would go to a lawyer here in America, and that legal work would be done here in America. If you got your x-ray taken, it would be read by a radiologist here in America. If you had your taxes done, it would be done by an accountant here in America, and so on. But those things are no longer necessarily true. And so just like all the other jobs that we can think about, industrial jobs and manufacturing jobs that were once done in the U.S. and now are done not so much in the U.S., these jobs have also moved offshore. And it's not just Asia. I mean, that works well for his little A theme. It's all over the world, Russia, Ireland, so forth. And maybe if you read Tom Friedman's book about the flat world, he sort of talks a lot about these processes. So that's Asia. And then the last A for Pink is automation, which is clearly a technological metaphor. And it certainly harkens back to, we think about the Industrial Revolution, when automation came along and changed the kinds of work that people might be able to do for a living. We also now have smarter machines, and so we have different kinds of automation. The automation that will do your taxes for you, automation that will help you find legal documents without the help of a lawyer, automation that will do a lot of the computer programming that used to need to be done by people. A lot of the complex calculations that were once done by people can now be done by machines. And so, again, we can find jobs that would have been done by knowledge workers, particularly at the entry level, right? The more basic things that still needed to be done by people that were trained to do complex tasks, but were still relatively basic tasks within a profession. Those kinds of jobs, which were done by graduates of these programs and these majors and so forth, are now often done by machines, or they're done overseas, and so on. And so those forces have kind of shifted these careers, and it doesn't mean that it's bad news to be an engineer necessarily, because a lot of people will certainly say that we need a lot of good engineers. But what it does mean, and I think this is Pink's main point, is that we need engineers who are not simply capable of doing these L-directed thinking tasks, these complex rational tasks. They also need to be creative. They need to have a sense of style or design. They need to be able to communicate. They need to have this emotional intelligence and so on. They need to be able to see the big picture, to conceptualize things. And so it's not that these careers are going away, but it's that these careers are shifting. And in addition, that there are other careers that are coming along that are hinged more on these kinds of skills that we need to work on. And so, what the rest of Pink's book talks about is these, he kind of identifies some of these skills like design and storytelling, and symphony, I think, is another one that he talks about. And he tries to give you some idea about what those skills mean, and he gives you some tips about how you might try to develop those kinds of skills. and that's all useful. But you're in college, so maybe you should be thinking about how you could get these kinds of skills, through your actual education. So here are the questions that I want you to consider and maybe write about on the blog as we move forward this week. First of all, thinking about the career that you have in mind for yourself. How does it stack up against the questions that Pink raises? Can someone overseas do it cheaper? Can a computer do it faster? Is my job something that is in demand in an age of abundance? Those are Pink's 3 questions. How do you answer those questions for the job you think that you want to do when you graduate? And then you might think about, how, as I've already sort of suggested, how is your education preparing you for these kind of creative professional jobs as they get called elsewhere? Certainly our school system, with its emphasis on testing and so forth, is still quite heavily emphasizing the left-directed thinking model. But how does it deal with the right-directed thinking model? We often talk about art programs and music programs as being in danger, and those are certainly 2 areas where you could learn these more creative skills. How does your education, how has it so far prepared you to do these kinds of things that we once maybe thought of as being not so valuable, but at least Pink is arguing now will be essential? And thinking specifically in terms of stuff that we're doing in this class, how does learning to work collaboratively through this kind of complex networked environment that we're working in this semester relate to the kinds of skills that you will need to learn as a creative professional? Do you see yourself working in the kinds of environments that we are learning in right now? What do you think Pink would say about that? So yeah, think about those questions, read the book, and I'll be interested to see what you come up with. See you soon.